And welcome to the Wednesday, August 19th, 2026 regular meeting of the Commission to Address Homelessness. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I would like to call on Commissioner Trujillo to lead us in the pledge. Please go.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. The agenda for today contains a brief general description of each item to be considered. Except as provided by law, no action shall be taken on any item not appearing on the agenda. The Commission to Address Homelessness encourages public participation. If you wish to speak on any item appearing on the agenda or during general public comments, please complete a speaker form and return it into the clerk prior to the reading of the item. Speakers will be given up to 3 minutes to speak. The clerk will run a timer and announce when your time is up. Public comment may also be submitted electronically by emailing response@ocgov.com. As a reminder, please be aware that the room is hot mic'd for the live stream of the meeting. Additional microphones are placed on the table in front of you. Commissioners, please speak into the microphone so it may pick up your comment for the live stream. A red light indicates the microphone is on. Please try to keep side conversations to a minimum, as they may be picked up by the microphones throughout the room, and set all cell phones to mute or vibrate for the duration of the meeting. With that, we will move on to roll call. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Okay. Chair Cunningham,
Here.
Vice Chair Hurst,
Here.
Commissioner Wynn, Commissioner Sarmiento,
Here.
Commissioner Spitzer,
Here.
Commissioner Pitts, Commissioner Foster,
Here.
Commissioner France,
Here.
Commissioner Vasquez,
Here.
Commissioner Rose, Commissioner Trejo,
Here.
Commissioner Kelly,
Here.
Commissioner Shinagawa, Commissioner Bruno Nelson,
Here.
Commissioner Lodby,
Here.
Commissioner Parks,
Here.
Commissioner Bobko,
Here.
Commissioner Rios Faust,
Here.
and Commissioner Morse.
Here.
Okay, and we do have a quorum.
Great. At this time, we will take general public comment from any members of the public wishing to speak on any non-agenda topics that are under the subject matter jurisdiction of the Commission. Madam Clerk, do we have any requests to speak?
I have not received any requests.
That's great. At this time, commissioners may make any general comments, updates, or announcements, future agenda items, or give direction to staff. Are there any comments, updates, or announcements from my fellow commissioners? And I'm going to actually call on Commissioner Parks to tell us about this beautiful display that we all walked by as we came into this meeting.
Great, thank you. So it's wonderful to be here, and I'm going to get some flyers here that we're going to pass out. Alejandro here from our team is really the inspiration in creating a display that helps people understand the history of how homelessness came to be more prevalent in the United States, and tied it into an opportunity for us to honor what we call unsung heroes. Those are people who work for the different homeless service providers who maybe don't get the recognition that they deserve because their jobs sometimes go unnoticed, and they are such incredibly tough roles they play in working with folks who really need that extra help along the way, and they do it with such grace and dignity. So every year we recognize our unsung heroes, and in this case, Alejandro had the idea of pairing it to help educate people on homelessness, and at the end of the day, what solves homelessness. And when you walk through and you read all of these, and I hope you have a chance to, you'll come to the very end and it says like we all play a role, that we all are part of the solution in terms of ending homelessness. So it's I think a really wonderful way to help educate people in a humane and dignified way. And what I'd like to add is that we'd love this display to get more visibility all around the county. So if you have an office it could be in, maybe you're part of a club it should be in, maybe it's part of a school that you have a relationship with. Our team is available. We have it already in 2 or 3 different places coming up in the next few weeks. But we would love to have this story travel throughout Orange County. So thank you for letting me share.
Thank you, Commissioner. I love that program because I've been able to nominate 2 different staff people over the years, and it's really special for them because they're behind the scenes, they're not on the front lines like we are, and recognizing the work that they're doing, because the work we do is hard, is a fantastic way for us to be able to just celebrate the people that are absolutely unsung heroes. So thank you for that. Does anybody, oh, right, Commissioner Bruno Nelson.
I have a few things to announce, but seeing how the board chair for Cal Ultimate Health is also here, Supervisor Sarmiento, I would love for him to be able to share.
Well, I'll just kick it off as a good chair to somebody who knows a lot more detail, and to Commissioner Bruno Nelson. But we did inaugurate something called CARE Traffic Control just last week, and that is now putting together a hub of where our street medicine efforts are going to be done throughout the county. We had 4 cities that came on board with us, starting with Garden Grove, then Costa Mesa, Anaheim, and Santa Ana. But the board at Cal Optima just took a board directive and doubled that number, so 4 additional cities. And help me, Commissioner, but I think it's Westminster, Huntington Beach, Seal Beach, and Fountain Valley. So those cities will be joining the street medicine effort. And we realize that the success of the program has been really strong. That we know there's interest from throughout the county. If you don't know what street medicine is, it's basically a doctor's office on wheels that goes out and addresses the needs of people who are unhoused. So it's been very successful. One of the concerns that we have, though, going forward is the funding that helps support that effort is through CalAIM. And that is now going to be coming to a conclusion. We're working with some of our federal representatives to see how they can extend that, because it's been successful. It's been able to fund that program in addition to many other efforts at Cal Optima. But Kelly, why don't you go ahead and fill in a couple more gaps?
I don't know that there's any gaps to fill. I think that was pretty good. Thank you.
Could you address the funding? Obviously, that's critical. So you're expanding, and then I'd hate to see something be immediately contracted. So could you just tell us what the issues are and what the next steps are in terms of influentials who are trying to effectuate whatever? It's our congressional delegation. Is the board taking a position on this at a board meeting or legislative platform? Like, what's next?
So if the federal funding doesn't come, or CalAIM dollars aren't extended, then obviously we fund it through Cal Optima, right? And we have the ability to do that, but we think that this is a federal effort that they started. It's a great program. We have great metrics to show that there's been success. But yeah, we believe it's something that we can demonstrate through successful metrics that these are good investments to make. But
That's exactly spot on. Specifically for the street medicine program, it starts out being funded through grant funding, but then it eventually becomes sustainable after 18 to 24 months through CalAIM reimbursements. So Cal Ultimate Health funds it in the beginning, kind of fronts the cost to allow the teams to build the staff necessary, and then as the months progress and the number of individuals on each team increases as far as the members being served, then they bill us for those services, resulting in needing less grant money. At the end of 24 months, it's completely sustainable. So I think Supervisor's comment, which is spot on, is that as CalAIM dollars are at risk, thereby goes the risk of those reimbursement dollars. But there is definitely an effort to want to continue that. Cal Ultimate Health has always been very supportive of CalAIM. We were one of the first health plans to operationalize all 14 of the community supports right away, and there is a tremendous commitment on the part of our board to continue those services as possible.
So when you said thereby goes the risk, does the risk go away, or do you mean thereby enhances?
There is the risk. The risk exists because the possibility of the funds going away. My mic is not working. The risk exists because the possibility of the funding goes away if the waiver is not approved.
I see. And how long is the term of the funding presently? Is it through the fiscal year or calendar year?
CalAIM is currently funded through December 31st of this year. The waiver is currently up at CMS. They have not made a decision yet on whether that will be approved or not. If it is approved, then CalAIM reimbursement would exist. If it's not approved, then it will fall to the state.
I feel like deja vu, right here, sitting here, raising issue funding, and kind of, where does that go next? So,
We would love and invite you to help us, and I think this is begging the
last
question.
time I
but
tried to
let-
help, I
let-
threw a
No, no, well-
huge monkey wrench into
Yeah, well,
everything.
we don't need everybody's signature, but a signature or something coming from your office demonstrating that, there's a need. Look, the federal government has been very difficult to understand, and I'll put that kindly, because they're cutting funding on efforts like this that make it really difficult for us to continue servicing. I think coming from offices that are, our district attorney, our sheriffs, and others realizing that these are best efforts to help people in the community can really move the needle. So I think maybe we could send you some information.
Yeah, is there a template is there some template we could at least circulate for consideration?
If there isn't one, we'll create one for you.
Okay, perfect. Okay,
Absolutely.
great, thanks.
Wonderful. Does any other commissioner like to share? Did you have something, Vice Chair?
No, thank you.
Okay, wonderful. All right, seeing none. We will now move on to the discussion items on our agenda. Madam Clerk, will you please read the first item?
Yes, item number 1 is the Commission to Address Homelessness update, which includes membership update, continuum of care program notice of funding opportunity, and homeless service system pillars ad hocs. And we do not have any requests to speak on this item.
Wonderful. Doug, will you please provide an update for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see everyone again this month. So our first update is around membership. So today is we're welcoming Commissioner Aaron France, City Manager of Buena Park, to the Commission. Commissioner France has been with the City of Buena Park for over 20 years and has been their City Manager since 2020. He's also the chair of the North Spa Collaborative and has helped bring on a variety of critical resources in the North Spa, including Buena Park and Placentia Navigation Centers, as well as the Hope Center. As we've discussed many times here, the North Spa Collaborative is really such a shining example of jurisdictions coming together to pool thoughts, resources, leadership to address homelessness. And if you're comfortable, Madam Chair, maybe hand it over to Commissioner France to say a word or two.
Please.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just want to introduce myself, Aaron France from the City of Buena Park. Thank you, Doug, for the introduction. Just want to add that I hope to be a benefit to the committee. I'll probably very much ease my way into this commission. I hear that there are some subcommittees I might get asked to join, and appreciate Doug asking me to join the committee. So happy to answer any questions.
Wonderful. Welcome, Commissioner France. We're excited to have you. And I echo what Doug said about the North Spa Collaborative. It's nice to see that spa has been able to come together and really tackle the hard issues that are happening up there, especially as it surrounds homelessness. So thank you. Welcome. We'll definitely get you involved.
All right, so for my second update, and speaking about funding, this one's an update that on a topic that's been coming back to the commission now since December. So since December, we've been discussing the changes the Trump administration is attempting to make to the COC program and what impacts we expect to see here locally based on those changes. Additionally, we've been keeping the commission informed of the federal court proceedings related to the NOFO. When it comes to the court proceedings, most of our discussion has been focused on the FY 2025 NOFO that HUD looked to release in November and December of last year. Those proceedings lasted through April and resulted in HUD being required to renew all grants from the prior year, and largely not so much due to the court proceedings, but due to Congress passing the Consolidated Appropriations Act in February, which provided specific timelines to HUD around renewing grantees. HUD is currently working with those grantees for renewal, and just to provide some perspective, most of the grantees have a signed agreement, but about 900 out of the 6,500 plus grants that HUD awards through this process are still working on a settlement on a standard agreement and being renewed. So it's a work in progress, but for the most part, when it comes to FY 2025, NOFO, we know exactly where it is going. So I say all of that to say that moving on to the current NOFO activity, you may recall that in our June meeting, we announced that HUD released this year's the FY26 COC NOFO on June 1st. The 2026 NOFO contained many of the changes that the Trump administration was looking to make in the 2025 NOFO, but were not successful in making during that NOFO. This includes a shift away from permanent housing to a focus on transitional housing and supportive services only programs, as well as reducing the reduction in the percentage of funding a community can put under their Tier 1 designation. So what that means is that this being the designation that is essentially safe and traditionally not at risk of loss for a community. So as we've spoken about before, Tier 1 has historically represented about 90% of the funding, 85 to 90% of the funding that a collective community gets through the COC program. Reducing it to 60%, which this NOFO does, means that now instead of 10% of your funding being up for competitive renewal, 40% of your funding is up for competitive renewal. So obviously up for risk of losing. Although there were significant changes in the NOFO, those changes were tempered by the guidelines that were in that Consolidated Appropriations Act that was passed back in February that I referenced for 2025. It also had language for requirements for the 2026 NOFO. And in that Appropriations Act, it restricted the reduction of Tier 1 to 60%. So I just mentioned it went down to 60%. The original goal by the administration was to bring it all the way down to 30%. Additionally, as there were specific timelines outlined in the Consolidation Appropriations Act for the 2025 NOFO, they also provided specific deadlines for this year's NOFO as well. And the two main ones being the release of the NOFO by June 1st, which they accomplished, and then HUD is required to announce awards of this funding by December 1st. Upon the release of the NOFO, our office, as the collaborative applicant, worked diligently with the COC, its board, and the grantees to achieve the steps required to submit an application by August 26th, its deadline. This included issuing project renewal application, a request for proposal, convening independent review panels, developing ranking, tiering, funding recommendations, and proposed project priorities. Obviously, I'm getting a little bit into the weeds, but I say all of this to just give a little bit of an insight to this isn't just filling out an application. There's dozens of steps that a collective community has to do in order to get to the point where they could apply. And our office is the collaborative applicant who's responsible for leading a community through those steps. We have led them through many of those steps. These recommendations, specifically going through that process, allows for a community to understand what projects it wants to support for renewal funding and what projects it wants to have funded for the first time. So as we took those recommendations to the board for funding for the COC board on August 7th, the board reviewed and approved those recommendations and the priority in which they're required to go to HUD. I say all of that to say when the NOFO dropped on June 1st, additional lawsuits were filed against HUD, arguing that this NOFO was also unlawful. As we work towards completing the application in a timely fashion, these lawsuits made their way through the federal court system, specifically the same district that oversaw the 2025 litigation as well. On August 7th, literally while we were in a special COC board meeting getting approvals for our priority listings, the court ruled that HUD did not follow the proper process in releasing the NOFO, specifically not completing the notice and commenting section. This ruling immediately vacated the NOFO, but worth noting is that the court made a few important remarks in their ruling. The first is the ruling only had to do with the violation of procedure on releasing the NOFO, and did not speak to the merits itself of what was in the NOFO, what ultimately the lawsuit was about. It also stated that HUD has the right to re-release the NOFO if it follows the appropriate procedure. Since the ruling on the 7th, there's been a flurry of activity in this case, making it harder and harder for us to know where this is eventually going to land. HUD has filed an appeal in federal court as well as a stay on the ruling. The stay, and for the lawyers in the room, if I get this wrong, forgive me, the stay on the ruling has been denied and the appeal is still pending. Part of the appeal, and something very much at play, is that the Consolidation Appropriations Act that I've mentioned a couple of times here requires HUD to announce the awards by December 1st, like I mentioned. HUD speaks to this deadline in their appeal and speaks to how they will be unable to meet this deadline if delays continue to happen. So at this time, for us as a community, we are continuing to work with the COC to make sure if and when the NOFO reopens, we're ready to move quickly and apply. But besides that, there is not much more that we can do but sort of sit and wait, which is obviously a really frustrating position to be in. With that, I'll move on to my third update, and then as I pass it back to the chair, obviously, I'll take questions on any of these topics. So for my last update, real quickly, I just want to provide you all with an update on the ad hocs that the commission, you all, formed around the pillars at the last meeting. Each of the 4 ad hocs have met at least once already, and there has been great discussion around gaps in the pillars and potential interventions to address those gaps. Over the next 2 months, the ad hocs will be focused on identifying specific efforts that the group and each commissioner can participate in to improve communication, collaboration, coordination in each of the specific pillars. And with that, I'll pass it back to the chair.
Thank you, Doug, for those important updates. It is definitely frustrating that we have had so much challenge with our funding. Does anyone have any questions for Doug, or does the chair of the COC want to add anything of color to? She's looking down at Todd's sending a text right now to handle it. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I'm multitasking, you're right.
Thank you. Thought you were handling this funding challenge that we had. Yes.
I think Doug did a great job during the breakdown, considering there's been a lot of back and forth. It's been quite the roller coaster. I did want to take a minute and thank the staff. I think to be responsive to ever-changing requirements and deadlines, and to push all of these different needs forward while simultaneously trying to learn is incredibly difficult. And I think I just wanted to take a minute and thank the staff, because that has been really difficult. And I also wanted just to note that alongside of the staff, all of the service providers have been equally responsive and at times had to change applications and evolve their programs to meet the changing requirements while still making sure that we're meeting the needs of those that are unhoused in our community. And so I don't want to lose that, because the strain is not only on those that are unhoused and the unpredictability of whether their housing situation will stay, but it's also impacting service providers. And so I just wanted to make sure and note that, and just to appreciate, and then because I have the mic, I just also wanted to appreciate all of you that participated in the joint meeting and were there to learn more about the NOFO process.
Thank you. Commissioner Morris.
Yes, I would also like to thank the staff. I'm surprised any of them are still sane on the back and forth that came out of HUD. I would also like to put out a thank you to Judge Mary S. McElroy, who was the judge who made this decision in the federal court. And I was being part of the continuum of care. I got the same text Doug got during the middle of a meeting when there was a court ruling change. That's how, we're there to decide on one thing and it changes. It's been nutty. I think maybe Dr. Kelly could rule on the mental health of HUD.
I think one of the challenges, and you know, a couple of things. I failed to mention, I appreciate both commissioners' recognition of the staff, but because it's such a community process, it required a ton of commitment by the board and folks, COC members in general. And then there was, I believe, over 24 organizations that applied through the local process for this funding. So regardless of where one might feel the merits of these changes are, I think the challenge of our current situation that I see from my position is not only just the wasted time and effort that was put in over the last 3 months specifically, but really over the last year on a lot of these issues. But I think the real challenge we have is that we're coming up on this December 1st deadline where HUD is required by Congress to make these awards. I'd imagine by the time we come back in October for our next meeting, we'll have an understanding of, some direction. And there's a world where all of the grantees just get renewed again for 1 year. And that hasn't been discussed tremendously publicly, so it's a little bit of me prognosticating here, but that's good in some ways. But the challenge is that there's been a handful of grantees that are, longtime grantees that are willingly reallocating their funding. So that means they're giving up their funding and they're essentially ramping down their program. And that takes some time. So if all of a sudden they're in this ramp down mode and they're told by HUD, okay, we're just going to give you another year of funding, in theory that sounds good, but they're working on ramping down and now they have to ramp back up for a year. And there's this pressure because if they say no thank you, I've ramped down and I don't want this funding, the way that the NOFO's written, and this is getting really technical, they'll essentially be giving the county's big pot, they'll be giving their slice of the money away. So the grantees are not only, when they're faced with that decision, required to think about how they can programmatically handle another year of funding when they've already started ramping down, but they have this external community pressure of, if I don't accept the money, that money's going away for other groups when I eventually do ramp down in the future NOFOs. And then the other challenge we have is because we are seeing funding cuts across the board. I'll speak for the Office of Care Coordination outside of the being the collaborative applicant, but the office that oversees our outreach and engagement program. There's funding, we're seeing decreases of funding for outreach, and we saw this as an opportunity to fund our outreach program. So there was a world where, yet again, regardless of where people feel like the merits of this changes, how they feel about the merits of the changes of policy, that this was going to fill a very specific gap here in the Orange County system of care. So having that put on pause has really put a lot of groups that were on that priority listing, that this was a real lifeline for funding, yet again back in that peril. So it's sort of like no one's at the moment without wounds in this or have some damage here. So we'll see where this goes. And there really is, there's not, the tough part is also there's not much to do at the moment. Because, when we advocated back in December, there was an advocacy around up to our federal delegation, asking them to just renew the funding. And I guess we could, that advocacy can continue, but the general homeless service community across the country hasn't called for that just yet. And so there's not really an advocacy component at the moment. It's all just waiting to see what plays out in the court system. So, yeah.
So all over the radio and TV this morning was the discussion about the LA City Council taking out 13 enforcement areas, 12 or 13 enforcement areas. They're no longer going to enforce homeless encampments in one of the city council members' districts. There's also a lot of LA media over the last year and a half about the allegation that there's been a tremendous amount of money misspent by LA homeless,
LASA, the
LASA,
Homeless
okay.
Service Authority.
What's happening is we're getting painted in a broad brush in Washington, D.C. with an anti-California sentiment. And then all these allegations of things that are going in the biggest media market in the country, except for New York, Los Angeles. So rather than sit and kind of wait, I get that, that's very discomforting. I think we have to continue to engage in our own advocacy of what we're doing here, because we're getting drowned out by allegations of mismanagement in other jurisdictions. And what's going to happen is, and you can already see it, is we're going to be the victims of those larger allegations because they're taking up all the oxygen in the room. So I would ask you to think about, all of us think about, how we should be telling our story, our successes, why this funding is important and how it's being effectuated and how it is creating, there's a word for it, I can't think of it, but I'll just make up one, the exponential impact. We're increasing the leverage of this funding through CalOptum and other sources. Other cities are, put money in to do, say, this Dr. Van thing. My point being is, I don't think we're telling our story, and I don't think we're doing it sufficiently. So I think that's a project. I'm not reading any op-eds in the LA Times or the Orange County Register about all the good things we're doing here in Orange County. So I just think we're just getting subsumed by the negative discussions that are going in our neighboring city and county. And LA is going to take up all the room. I just think we need to figure out how to not let that happen. I can't explain, or I'm not going to justify what's going on in LA, but it was all over KFI this morning, this discussion of what the city council's doing. And Bill Handel, he's the drive time in the morning. I know, I used to work for him. He has 1 million listeners in the morning. 1 million people listening to that discussion causes influence. You can't avoid it. So I think we should think about how to get our story out.
Thank you, Commissioner Spitzer. Maybe we should get on KFI.
I can get you on KFI anytime.
Commissioner Sarmiento.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. First, let me welcome Commissioner France. Thank you for agreeing to serve, and we appreciate having somebody from North County help us out, and hopefully, and I know you'll add value and bring value to this, so I appreciate that. So Doug, just on a couple of points, I know that you talked about, NOFO 26. I guess, my concern is going forward, the delay or the confusion on NOFO 27, as we're now, approaching that, what sort of problems that's going to cause. But I think, I agree with Commissioner Spitzer. I think we don't tell our story well enough. There's a lot of good things to share. We actually just circulated a very good op-ed from CalOptum on street medicine. So another thing that we want to send to you so you can take a look at that. But it's been published, and I know there was some coverage by, was it Channel 7? I forget which network, or Channel 4, and Telemundo. I listen to KPFK, so we need to reach out to them. They do good, accurate truth-telling. And without the fluff. So I think that, it's important for us to share good information everywhere. But I do think that we have a unique story to tell. I think, unfortunately, we're dealing with an administration that is painting everybody with a broad brush, and they're not doing their homework and realizing that this is now hurting people and killing people. So that's the simple message on our part, that we're trying to save lives as opposed to others in Washington that don't see the good work being done. Finally, on the prevention update, thank you to Commissioner Parks, Commissioner Spitzer, Commissioner Pitts, and Commissioner Vasquez for serving on that ad hoc. One of the things I know that was spoken about when we met on the 28th, and I know it was, how do we share, and trying to share good stats on prevention, like it's almost proving a negative because it's hard to say, how successful are you? Well, having to demonstrate that is just a different sort of indicia that you have to use. But I think looking at the point in time count where that at least is trending in the right direction, looking at people in our homeless stabilization and prevention program, all those families staying housed is another good way. But I think just sharing resources about what our prevention resources and supports are throughout the county, working with our school districts. So I know we had success when I was mayor in Santa Ana, partnering with our school districts because parents and families really engage and see that as a trusted partner. I don't want to say municipal government or county government isn't as trusted, but schools are where people really get sort of baseline needs met. So to the extent that we can provide and work with them, I think it's a really good value, and I know United Way works closely with them, but that would be one way that we could share some really valuable resources. But on NOFO 27, Doug, what's the potential harm to that?
So there hasn't been, we're not there yet for the, so really it has to settle this one first. And, obviously there's midterm elections coming up in November. And you think about, the Consolidation Act, the Appropriations Act signed back in February, really has been monumental in moving 25 and 26 along, meaning Congress, stood up and spoke. So I imagine that when we get past the midterm elections, which will obviously be in early November, we're still staring at this December 1 date for 26. It'll be really interesting. I think the elections will play a big role in the future of the COC NOFO because we saw how big Congress played a role this year with the Appropriations Act. I don't believe the Appropriations Act provided timelines for the 2027 NOFO, just for 25 and 26.
Thank you. That was a really healthy discussion. I, too, agree with Commissioner Spitzer that we are not telling our story well enough. The organization that I run expanded its territory into Los Angeles. And, of course, we have a big hill to climb to try to change the narrative up there of we're really here to do good work. We're not trying to waste money. We're actually trying to help people. And we need to talk about those successes more. One thing I was thinking about, and this is just random because this is how my brain works. So it scares me to think that organizations are ramping down their services for people. Is there a way that they could collaborate, 2 nonprofits, 3 nonprofits could collaborate so they're not ramping down services, but they're sharing resources somehow? I'm just throwing that out. I don't even have an answer for it, but that scares me because I get it. If they're ramping down and they say they don't need the funding, then we lose the funding, and so it's this very big, oh, good, look at, the chair has an answer. I love that. Commissioner Rios Faust.
I don't know that I have an answer, but I think I'll sort of add some definition to ramping down, right? So they're ramping down because permanent housing won't be funded. So those organizations have made a decision to shift their programming to another bucket, not necessarily stop serving. So they have to essentially ramp one service model down to create the second service model. So that's the story with some of them. So it's not, again, necessarily that they won't be served, but they have elected to and seen the opportunity to shift to the different model that is being supported and encouraged in the NOFO. And you've seen that with several providers where they see the opportunity to shift from one model to another model. And quite honestly, I think that shows that we should actually really take a look at a robust service models in order to address homelessness. And so that's what you're seeing. It's not like we're not going to do this service. So you're seeing that, and at the same time, seeing organizations grapple with how to do that in the most effective way when there isn't clarity on what success looks like in this next NOFO. So I think, so I wouldn't, so the collaboration piece that I would sort of note that I think gets lost when we're talking about ramping down or shifting is that they've been partnering well with the COC, partnering well with OCC team to be able to provide the most comprehensive application that meets the requirements in that application process. And it's a moving target.
Thank you, that's very helpful. Yes, Commissioner Parks.
Yeah, I'm going to follow up, and yeah, if there are gaps forming, I think we'd all like to know and to be alerted to see if there are opportunities for more collaboration. But I love the public awareness. It's a big focus we have in our United 10 homelessness effort. But a couple of things are coming up in November. It's Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week. We can make a goal to have our messaging, our story, what we want to convey at that time from the commission. I think that would be an appropriate window and something we can look for in November. So we all have the same talking points and blitz, maybe all these different radio stations everybody listens to. And I know our team's working closely with PBS. And I think we shared some of the different opportunities. And I think they want to do something in that time period too. And it'd be great to have consistent messaging points from all aspects. We're all saying the same thing about what's happening in Orange County. So I'm happy to get involved if that's something that you would like, Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Parks, I think that would be great, because I agree, we all need to be saying the same thing and celebrating our wins when we can. Yes, Commissioner Spitzer.
So in response to that, Sue, I really like that. But in each department, like a lot of us have PIOs, and we really try to focus, right, with consistent messaging and things like that. But you have to have a point person who's in charge of getting that done for us. Just like I appreciate Supervisor Sarmiento's letting us know about this piece that I guess was done with Cal Optima. I would love to get that, and I'll put it out on all my socials, right? I mean, I think those are the kinds of things I'd like to have somebody be assigned to help coordinate that. So, Doug, I don't know. I mean, what resources do we have at the county? You're sitting next to Casey, so maybe you could ask him, but.
Yeah, please.
I mean, is
No,
there,
we could-
do we have, you guys have a lot on your plate, and I don't know if public relations is your expertise.
Well, we
Who
were-
could help us with
Yeah.
keeping us organized like that?
I think the PIO's office, Molly Nicholson and Jonathan could be, have been working with us, but definitely something, hearing this conversation is something I'd imagine we want to bring back.
Sorry for hijacking your mic. Now, actually, we had an interesting conversation late last week on how to better use that team, actually moving resources into that team that may have been underutilized. Certainly, there's a wide variety of areas where we need to do better outreach, but certainly when we get into advocacy for funding and setting that stage for, we're Orange County, but we're not rich, right? And I think that's an important thing. So clearly looking at that, clearly looking at leveraging Jessica's team to do more of that, so.
Well, and I think that goes in line with our desire to be more communicative, collaboration, and communicate better with each other. So perhaps it's a moment of sharing that op-ed so we can share those wins together. But I know that, yes, it always takes staff, and I'm sorry, Doug.
No, that's all right. I'll give you an example on that, Chair, and that is, okay, so you take that piece, but somebody needs to make a suggestion to me about how I should craft it for my audience and in my voice. Why is what they're saying relevant to the district attorney's office? Why is it relevant to healthcare? Why is it relevant to United Way? Why is it relevant to the city managers, right? Like, that's what, there aren't enough hours in the day for me to be that creative. And so I rely on people to help me do that every single day. So I would just, that's what I think, we have to up our level of sophistication. And we need professionals vis-a-vis Molly and her team to suggest that. Hey, Todd, here's something CalOptima, I would suggest, could you put it on your socials? Here would be your tagline, your hashtags. Boom, I can get that done in 30 seconds. So that I'm looking for even that, like, turbo enhancement.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner Spitzer. We'd all love someone to write that stuff for us, wouldn't we? Yeah, but I think it's it's stirring some thought process for all of us to think about, and how are we sharing this collective message and getting it out there to the public. So I appreciate that. Did you have something else? Great, thank you. Okay, I think we also want to talk about, I want to thank everybody for really working hard on one of our pillar committees. So I sit in the shelter and housing. It's very interesting to sit there in a much smaller space to be able to kind of dive deep into some of the things that we really need to focus in on. So thank you for recognizing those, Supervisor, for who's on the prevention side. I had an interesting comment come out of a board member last week that I want to share, and I don't know if this resonates with everyone, but we're sitting there making our 1 to 5 year strategic plan on how do we actually move the needle on building the housing that's needed out there for people experiencing homelessness. When I was talking about affordable housing and prevention, she says, well, isn't it prevention if we're building affordable housing? And I sat there for a minute and I thought, that's an interesting perspective, because by building more affordable housing and having those attainable units for people to be able to get into, we are preventing homelessness from happening. So just wanted to throw that out there. Thank you, Board Member Kendra. And she runs ULI, and I thought it was a very interesting perspective and something that I'm going to take back and really think about. How do we marry these two things together and make sure that we're keeping people out of homelessness as we're moving our thoughts forward. So would there be any other commissioner comments about the different committees? Any thoughts that you've had while you've been sitting in our ad hoc committees at all?
Yes.
Vice Chair Hurst.
Thank you. I'm serving on the ad hoc for supportive services, and just wanted to say there's tremendous energy on that team as well. I wanted to thank those participants. We're working on a generic idea to bring forward in future about a web-based information portal that could serve the entire commission and the homeless services industry across the county. It's in the very earliest stages, but there's real excitement about that, and just wanted to speak up so we're not passive in that space, and let the group know, the commission know, and be encouraged. There's tremendous energy in that space. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Vice Chair. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, Madam Clerk, will you read the next item?
Yes, item 2 is Office of Care Coordination Update, which includes OC Same Day Solutions Fair, and we do not have any requests to speak.
Thank you. Doug, will you please give us an update?
Yeah, this will be a quick one. We have, one update from our office, and that's around our next Same Day Solutions Fair, which is next Thursday in Fullerton at the Fullerton Free Church from 10 to 2. It's on Thursday, the 27th. We already have about 30 vendors committed to attending, and we believe this may be the largest one yet. So please spread the word. Feel free to come as well. Thinking about telling our story, this has been one of the vehicles that has been really helpful in telling the story about Orange County and all the great work that's done to help folks while they're in homelessness, to end their homelessness. And like I always want to thank so many of the commissioners around this table for being a part of each and every one of these. I believe this is number 10, and what I'll say is every time we leave one of these, the overwhelming feeling is a really good, strong, energized feeling. And I say that from the staff's perspective, from the provider perspective, but also what we've noticed, both with our eyes and through survey feedback from the folks that receive direct help there. So We have this one coming up next week in September. We have Same Day Solutions Fair back at the Hub OC in the city of Orange. And I don't have it with me, but we have a date for Huntington Beach in October. And then November, we'll be back at the Hub. So, yeah, a lot of great work going on with the Same Day Solutions Fair. And that only happens through really great coordination and partnership. So with that, I'll pass it back.
Wonderful. Thank you, Doug. I love that that's actually as successful as it has been. It's been a great, great solution. Madam Clerk, will you please read the next item?
Yes, item number 3 is Homeless Death Review Committee Report on 2024 homeless deaths, presented by Kelly Estrada, Assistant Chief Deputy Coroner of the Orange County Sheriff's Department, and we have not received any requests to speak.
Wonderful. Welcome.
Good afternoon, and thank you to the Commission for having me back to go over some information that I know can sometimes be difficult data. Again, my name is Kelly Estrada. I'm the Assistant Chief Deputy Coroner, Orange County Sheriff's Department Coroner Division. Just a couple quick notes up front. I believe you do have the full 2024 report in your agenda items. However, this far into the year, I do have some updated numbers for 2025, so I'll be touching on both. Before I get started, though, we do have 5 remaining cases for 2025 that have yet to be classified. They are what we call pending. So as I go through these numbers, the percentage and number can change very slightly. However, what I will go over is a good representation of where we are for the year in 2025. So starting off with just an overall snapshot of where we are for the year, total PEH deaths in Orange County in 2025 are at 336. And again, what we've seen 2 years now in a row is that is trending in a favorable direction. We are 11%, seeing an 11% decline from 2024. Demographics for the 2025 year, for PEH decedents, we had 50% white, 33% Hispanic, 7% Asian, 6% Black, 4% other or unknown. And for gender, we had 81% male, 19% female, and 1% transgender. Again, these are 2025 numbers. However, compared to 2024 and previous, that distribution for race and gender seems to stay pretty consistent for our total PEH decedents.
Thank you.
Average age for PEH decedents in Orange County in 2025, we do see the bulk of the distribution here from starting at that 30 to 39 age group and then through the 60 to 69 age group, putting our overall average age of PEH decedents in Orange County at 51 years old. For the females, just breaking it down a little further, female average age is 48 years old and male average age is 52 years old. As a point of comparison, in 2024, the average age for a housed decedent in Orange County was 76, so that is significantly younger for the PEH classification. The manners of death that we're seeing for the PEH decedents, I'll go through this chart sort of line by line here. The predominant category for manner of death that we're seeing in 2025 for PEH deaths are due to an accidental death. That was 184 decedents, or 55%. The homicide category was 3% of PEH decedents, natural 35%, suicide 4%, and undetermined, or again, we do still have a small number of cases that are pending at 3%.
You want questions now or then?
So if you were to expand this chart a little bit further, I think it's worth pointing out that in 2019 and beyond and prior, we were seeing the predominant category of PEH deaths due to natural manner of death. However, in 2019, we did see that flip with accident being the predominant category. However, from 2024 to 2025, while accidents are still predominant, we are seeing a 5% decline there. And we are seeing natural start to trend back up by 5%. This next slide is
sort of a different visual of the number of accidental PEH deaths that we've had in Orange County, both in 2024 and 25. We are seeing the decline with the most recent numbers. I go back to those remaining pending cases that have yet to be classified. So I'd like to point out, even if all of those were to be an accidental overdose, which I'm not sure that they will, but even if they all were, this number would still be far less than it was in 2024, which again is trending in a favorable direction. Breaking down the accidental manner of death category by cause. This gives a snapshot of what each cause of death is and the percentage. So just going over that, we have overdose deaths with fentanyl present in the system being 31% of our accidental deaths. We have non-fentanyl related overdoses at 11.6%, and pedestrian versus motor vehicle accidents at 7.1%, being the top three causes of death in the accidental category. As compared to 2024, that number of 31% overdoses with fentanyl stayed exactly the same, 31% in 24, also in 25. However, beyond that, if you move to the non-fentanyl related overdoses and the pedestrian versus motor vehicle related deaths, both of those are a reduction. So the non-fentanyl related overdoses is down 1.5% from 2024, and pedestrian versus motor vehicles down 2% from 2024. And the same is true for the remainder of the list. Those numbers there are fairly small. However, everything in 24 was above 1%, and now we're seeing a decimal percentage there. So everything on that list is a reduction from the 2024 numbers. Of the 143 accidental overdoses among the PEH, we have 73% that involved fentanyl. That's 104 decedents. 79% that involved methamphetamine with 113 decedents, and 58% or 83 decedents overdose involved both methamphetamine and fentanyl. Pedestrian versus motor vehicle related fatalities. We had 24 PEH deaths of pedestrians being struck by a motor vehicle in 2025, and that's down from 34 in 2024, which is a 29% reduction. And we've also included there a map, just a geographical snapshot of where those deaths are occurring, with each each green point there representing one pedestrian versus motor vehicle fatality, to give an idea of the geographical location where those are occurring. And then finishing with homicide and suicide PEH deaths. So in 2025, of the 11 PEH homicides, excuse me, we had 5 by gunshot. Excuse me. 4 by, oh my goodness, I'm sorry, I apologize.
It always happens during a presentation. We all of us have this.
Kelly's getting over a cold. So the homicide, you can see here, it did increase from 2024 to 2025, but fairly consistent over the last 5 years there. And then the clicker for the next page. And then the next one we highlight is suicides, which continues to be, it actually went down from 2024 to 2025. So we saw that go up, over the last 5 years as we were doing these reports, but saw the first year of a decline in 2025. So that's the report. Happy to answer any questions. Again, the report you have in front of you is on 2024 numbers, and we'll have a full report on 2025 at the beginning of next year, but we wanted to be sure you had the most recent data available.
Question.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
Can you give us any insight, even instinctively, on why they're going down? That looks like great news at first glance. Can you give some context to that, please?
So we have seen a decline over the last, I think, the last 3 years, we've seen some decline in the homeless numbers, significant over the last two. And if you'll notice, Kelly highlighted that, we saw natural deaths being our predominant, and then in the last 6 years, we saw that switch to accidental, primarily being drugs, primarily being fentanyl. So what the sheriff's attributed it to is the concerted effort the county's made to address fentanyl, whether it be through distribution of naloxone, more aggressive enforcement of fentanyl coming into the country, more aggressive prosecution of people that are dealing fentanyl. I'm sure Prop 36 has helped with that, but I think this overall concerted effort to address fentanyl, which is really was the driver of the homeless deaths over the last few years.
Yes, Commissioner Spitzer.
So, Mr. Grangroff, I don't know if you all know this, but the DA, I'm responsible for reviewing all custodial deaths and officer-involved shooting deaths, so I read all those reports. I haven't delegated that responsibility, so I read all these reports. And so let's just, a death in the jail, overdose, and it gets categorized as accidental for the most part in the coroner's report. Sometimes is that like maybe it's for the assistant coroner, but is that a national recognized categorization of an overdose? In other words, it's a self-inflicted overdose most of the time. Somebody takes too much fentanyl, too much methamphetamine, whatever, and then it's ruled an accident. Is that a national standard? Or is that something we're using locally? Because to me, I find it unsettling, Mr. Grangoff, not with what you're doing, but just the fact we call it an accident. I don't know why it's
Yeah.
categorized that way.
My understanding is those manners are a national trend, but Kelly probably can better answer that.
I apologize for the
Sorry.
cough. Thank you guys for your patience.
Didn't mean
with
to
me.
ask you a question, I need an
No,
answer
that's
from you.
okay. So we follow the NAME manner guidelines. NAME is an acronym for National Accreditation of Medical Examiners, which stipulates the definitions for every category. So an overdose specifically would be determined to be an accident unless we had information that they intended to take their life, that it was an intentional overdose, therefore a suicidal act, or if somebody were to poison somebody else intentionally, then we'd be looking at maybe a homicide.
But these numbers that you presented, you do an annual report, I've seen it come across my desk, right?
Right.
So you publish it and you lay out all the categories vis-a-vis fentanyl and methamphetamine, even though it's in the accidental, you break it out like this in your public report, right?
Correct.
Okay, all right. Because the issue isn't going away of fentanyl and methamphetamine. I just want to make sure by putting it into the quote-unquote accident, we don't lose sight of it. I hear the sheriff talking about it all the time, but I don't think it should be out of the public purview because your biggest percentage of accidents with the homeless is drug overdose, right? So, okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
So I've got Commissioner Sarmiento, and then Commissioner Bobko will be next. Thank you.
So Kelly, that's why I always carry a cough drop in my pocket, because
I
it
tried
doesn't,
to get
it never fails, especially with recirculated air, whenever we're inside. Sometimes, those things happen, so believe me, you're in good company, because
Thank
it
you.
happens often. But thanks for the presentation. I think, again, with respect to trends, I think we're trending better when it comes to fentanyl. I do want to recognize that the county did do a lot to saturate, I think, the community with naloxone and a campaign, right? But also, it was in tandem with Cal Optima that did a large release. And Commissioner Bruno Nelson probably knows the numbers, but I know we invested millions into that effort. So I think both those efforts combined really did come at a moment when we were getting overwhelmed with these numbers spiking. And I think you said that from 24 to 25, it stayed flat or was there an 11% decrease?
For fentanyl-related overdoses
Correct.
specifically, they were both 31% in each year.
Okay.
In the non-fentanyl category, we did see a decrease.
Got it. So I'm hoping that we don't, that isn't the floor, that we continue to just realize that from 23 to 24, I think there was a big drop off, and that's where it seemed that the campaign and the investment was made. It's interesting, the mayor in New York City used some opioid settlement monies to provide naloxone in vending machines throughout communities where they saw where there was increased incidences. But I think to the extent that we want to make these as available as possible, as accessible to those that are going to be, at risk more than others, is really something that all of us should consider. How do we put them in places where people can easily access them? So to me, I think that the prosecution side on this, I get that there has to be some element of it. I think the effort that was made by both Cal Optum and the county really did help more so than the prosecution side, just my opinion. But I do think we need to have all those things working in tandem, but the investment was certainly necessary. On the homicide trend, so there we're not trending well. I know that we went from 2024, 8 to 11 in 25. Of those 11, 5 by gunshot wounds. How many of those were officer-involved shootings? How many of those were just, shots against one another, or whether?
I don't have that data with me, but as far as I know, none of those 5 here are
Or
represented.
OAS? Okay, good to know. So, so I think, for me, just looking at trends is really important. So we know these things are going to fluctuate, but I do think that, we want to make sure that as we, use our efforts wisely, we do see that 23 to 24 moment where everybody just said, look, this is now out of control. Let's saturate the county and the community with these resources. And I do think that made a huge effort. But I certainly agree with, the vice chair. I think that these numbers, with respect to deaths generally, I'm glad they're down. They're going down. They're not down as far as they should be, in my opinion, but, we are showing some success on some fronts. So I appreciate everybody who's had a role in this, but thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Bobko?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have a quick question, just a statistical question I'll throw out. As we talk about the percentage of natural deaths versus accidental, I'm wondering if those are categorized just as a group versus are those broken down in age categories? My contention would be, I would suspect that older adults experiencing homelessness have a higher rate of natural death than younger people experiencing homelessness. And I don't know if you guys categorize that information. So let me ask you that question, and then just if I could take a second, just talk about sort of the elder population.
Sure. So that's actually a number that I looked at before in preparation for this presentation. The average age of PEH decedents dying of natural causes was 58. So going back to our overall age of 51, it is slightly higher, but still not anywhere near that of the 76 that we see with the housed population.
Yeah. And I think I made some notes, if I may, for just like 2 minutes, because I think it's important that we don't lose sight of this community. We still have about 1,000 people in the county that are older adults experiencing homelessness. And statistically, I don't know if you all are familiar with the Home Hope study here in California, but just experiencing homelessness increases your mortality by about 3.5 times the normal population. In fact, in the study that was done in California, the continued homelessness, you are 82% more likely to die than to be housed. That's significant. And I think that when we look at these groups in general, we say accidental deaths, which I think applies to one part of the population. And I have some thoughts on that. And I think we've done a very good job with Narcan distribution. Our colleagues at OCEMS are trying to become a Narcan distribution center so that we can get even more. There's there's more that we can do as far as like medically assisted therapy. Trying to get people in treatment earlier improves their survivability. And again, I just want to make sure that when we look at this population, we say mostly accidental death, and the diagnosis serves, accidental overdose. Nobody overdoses on purpose. So if they come in and they've overdosed and they're cardiac arrest, I'm going to call them an accidental overdose and cardiac arrest, and then that'll end up reflected in their numbers as an accident. So that's where that comes from the documentation point of view. But again, I think we need to understand that these, specifically in the older population, natural causes still predominate. So the ability to adapt to these natural causes, when you experience homelessness, it incurs a health shock. So things that you are able to accommodate, just by scraping by, fall off the cliff when you go from a sheltered situation to your car. And then it becomes a medical problem. So again, I appreciate the report. I love the numbers. It's really, really good to get into where these things are headed. I just want to make sure that we're not sort of losing a very specific medical concern in the broader theme of accidental overdose in our homeless population, because I do think that there are projects that we're actively working on with the HCA to improve that specific segment. But this is again, as Dr. Bruno Nelson would say, not just a housing problem. This is a medical problem. So I appreciate the attention to it, and thank you for your time.
And just on that, sir, that feedback is really helpful, because the working group that the sheriff has that is going to be developing the 2025 report can you make sure that when we have this section on natural deaths, we can dive into that a little bit further and make sure that's addressed. So thanks for that input.
I help with the death review committee, so I'm pretty familiar. Let me know if I can help.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you both. It's a hard report to give. I'm glad to see the numbers going down as well, and I'm curious, wondering, since we have more people sheltered than unsheltered, is that also helping to make sure that people are in safety? Oh, Doug, thank you.
That actually speaks to the comment I was hoping to make and point out in the 2024 report. So first is for me to make sure I do my role. This report, as mentioned, the 2024 report is in everyone's packet, and obviously available on the sheriff's website. But specifically to shelter, and this is, I've been a part of the review committee since its inception back in, I believe, 2020. And this last year, and this report is the first report that provides detail about folks' connection to shelter. We've been measuring folks' connection to shelter in our office, I'd say unofficially, for a couple of years, and I'm happy that we were able to share this data with the Sheriff's Department in order to include it into the report, because, as Commissioner Bobko mentioned, and to allude to your question, on page 14 of the report, you'll see that really only 8.5% of the folks that were experiencing homelessness and passed away in 2024 were connected to a shelter at the time of their death. And only 18 and a little under 19% of the population had any history of entering a shelter, at least according to HMIS, which covers about a little more than 3/4 of the shelters here in Orange County. So, I see it as someone who sits in the Office of Care Coordination, as just the impact that shelter most likely has on people's ability, and mortality. So I'm excited to continue to hopefully contribute this data moving forward, and to see if the trend continues to show that, for the most part, people in shelter, pass away at a much lower frequency than those that are on the street. Hence, one of the many values of providing someone shelter and housing.
Yes, Commissioner Bobko.
Just to, again, support Doug and the work that they're doing. Statistically, just being homeless is about 3.5 times the mortality of the general population. being unsheltered is about 10 times the mortality. I don't think Mike was on.
Yes. Commissioner Bruno Nelson.
So first off, I just want to build on a little bit that Supervisor Sarmiento was saying as far as the Narcan distribution. Optima Health distributed 250,000 doses in 2024 and 2025. But in addition to that, we're also distributing that within our street medicine program. But what I really wanted to mention is I know there's also other efforts. And I can speak for somebody who's only been working in the county for 5 years now. And I think the effort that the county has made to make that available and to do that in unison is significantly larger today than it was when I first got here. You know, I came from providing services in LA where Narcan was all over the place, and I remember being shocked at how difficult it was to get in Orange County. That is not the case now. So I think we have a lot to celebrate there. I also want to really piggyback on Commissioner Bobko as well. You know, individuals that live on the street age at about 20 years faster than those of us that are housed. And I think that's what he's discussing and what we're experiencing here. We also know that the fastest growing cohort are those that are older adults. So knowing that and seeing these numbers, you can recognize how deeply that housing is health and how important it is to recognize that reality. When we're dealing with somebody who is 46 years old, for all intents and purposes, they're 66 years old, and their health conditions mirror that reality.
Thank you. I think this goes in line with our communication to the public, because the public probably has a hard time understanding why are we giving these things away, or why are we giving clean needles away. It goes back to communicating and trying to share a story of why. So thank you all for that discussion. And thank you both for coming in today. Yes. Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Doug's telling me to back Okay. This is good. I love all this discussion and input. Thank you, everybody. Now we will move to the next action item. Madam Clerk, will you please read the next item?
Actually, first is item 4.
Item 4. No, we don't have an action item. Boy, thank
Homeless
you.
Prevention Framework Project presented by Doug Beck, Director, Office of Care Coordination, and we do not have any requests to speak.
Great, thank you. Doug, will you please give us an update?
Sure. Where are we here? Let me make sure
We lost our way.
Yeah, okay. So for the last few years, this commission, many of our supervisors, our office, and ultimately really our entire homeless service community here in Orange County has focused on highlighting the importance of prevention in our system and the role it plays in helping us ultimately reduce the overall number of people experiencing homelessness in Orange County. I think we'd also all agree that prevention efforts have been largely underfunded and really difficult to secure, but that the programs we do have in this community have been incredibly impactful. So with that said, our office has tried to get a better understanding of all the efforts going on across the county, who's eligible for those different services, and how to quickly direct people into those services. We have also been interested in figuring out how to better bring together these efforts in a more coordinated, county-wide system approach that really maximizes the impact of each of those programs in our community. Our office has honestly really struggled with achieving those goals over the last few years, and last year we decided to bring on a consultant to help lead the efforts. So in January of this year, our office partnered with the Corporation for Supportive Housing in hopes of getting a better understanding of the resources in our community and what we need to do to have a more coordinated prevention system. CSH undertook this work really by framing it through a mixture of frameworks. First, through the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness's prevention framework, as well as looking at it through the lens of the guiding practice, the best practices and guiding principles in the Commission's pillar document. They stated that the only way to achieve our objective was by getting together as many of Orange County stakeholders as possible to ensure that the final report would not only be comprehensive, but inclusive in its findings and recommendations. And the way they went about this was through engaging the community over a 4-month stretch, navigating through 3 different exercises. The first being a level-setting all-day meeting that established project goals, reaffirmed definitions and scope around the work, identified key partners that needed to be at the table, defined roles and responsibilities for the stakeholders, and then develop an ongoing meeting structure. The second focused on understanding the prevention landscape here in Orange County, which they did through a targeted survey. And third, developing a set of recommendations regarding how to improve the homeless prevention system overall by working with a committee over the course of 6 weeks to develop a set of recommendations. CSH was able to receive almost 24 survey responses that helped outline many of the prevention services here in the county, but our office and CSH fully understand that in order to get a more comprehensive landscape, we really need engagement from a greater amount of stakeholders. Through the nearly 24 responses, 16 of those responses stated interest in serving on the 6-week-long committee focused on providing us all with a set of recommendations on how to improve our prevention system as a whole. So first, before I get into the committee's work, I really want to thank the committee members. As you can see here, their commitment was quite significant. They were expected to attend a 2-day-long initial in-person convening and then participate in a weekly virtual meeting that reviewed each prevention principle in our pillar to provide us with a set of recommendations. The conversation and feedback throughout these exercises were rich and came with real honest feedback from all the stakeholders. And one of them, including, which I want to point out again, is that we continue to need more stakeholders around the table. And because of that rich and honest feedback, we believe that not only we're not only grateful to the committee members, but we also believe that this report that you have in front of you, which is part of your packet as well, comes with a set of excellent, achievable recommendations for our county. The recommendations were created through breaking the committee into 3 groups. One of the groups focused on primary prevention efforts. The second was considering immediate interventions, and the last group focused on diversion. Each week, those 3 groups would take on a different principle outlined in our pillars document and speak to the needed recommendations in each one of those principles. So when all was said and done, and CSH looked at the many different recommendations of each of these 3 groups, there stood over 36 recommendations for our community. Those recommendations are wide-spanning, and some of them you see here up on the slide. The recommendations included recommendations around partnering with schools and other institutions in a stronger way. They were focused on system-wide training of our workforce, the need for additional funding and advocacy, the importance of reducing barriers to our services, as well as the need for increased bandwidth for our agencies and teams. Each of these recommendations are specific to Orange County, and each one is tangible enough to provide direction on implementation. So as we look at this report that outlines our journey and provides all of these great recommendations, our office and the committee that has helped us with this report are interested in transitioning this work away from the report, which is technically over, and into the implementation phase. And as stated in many of the recommendations in the report, there is an interest to do so through an organized, formal committee that ensures that there is great partnership and participation throughout this particular phase. as well as having a mechanism that ensures that we are regularly reporting out on the progress being made in these critical areas. So before we get into sort of the next steps that I just mentioned, which we will touch on a little bit in the next agenda item, I wanted to pause and hand it back to the chair, and happy to answer any questions about the report.
Thank you, Doug. I think this is great. This is one of our pillars on the Commission to Address Homelessness, and I feel that it should be something that we look to take the next step to as a body. So I would love any input from my fellow commissioners on that. The work's already done, at least on this first initial phase of this, and prevention is key. If we can stop it there, our work will be easy moving forward. Well, that's saying a lot, but it's actually the first step to make sure that we can keep people from actually entering into or going back into homelessness. So I'd love to hear from any of my fellow commissioners, especially on the prevention committee. Commissioner Parks.
Well, thank you, and yeah, totally supportive in terms of moving forward. I guess it's going to be really about what we're going to implement, right? It's a lot of information. We know a lot's going on, and so I'm kind of interested what those next steps are. But I think it's something we absolutely need to collaborate on because it's obviously much more humane and much more cost effective to get people housed. I'm just curious I wanted music as my background. Thank you, yes. I'm just curious, with our role as advisors to the board, is this something in terms of a funding that's going to need it to fund some of these programs? Is that part of our role to recommend that the supervisors consider funding more of this, or how would that fit in? I guess I'm just curious about that.
Well, I can tell you from past experience, when that happens, it doesn't sit well. So I'll take that one. Go ahead, Doug.
So I guess a couple of things. I'll take a little step back and then answer your question because I think it's important. When we went into this, the Office of Care Coordination, and me specifically, into this exercise, I was really interested in achieving like a landscape analysis and a few things, and really didn't understand what my team and CSH were talking about around these recommendations, but I was rolling with it. And then we got into the exercise, and what I really appreciated was, we had a really large group of stakeholders, a lot of folks, some represented here in this room, that played critical roles in the work. And I was a little nervous that the conversation was just going to be, we need more funding. And that is a clear given, but it really expanded out to a lot of really concrete next, recommendations that are things that, everything requires funding when staffing's required, but things that we could do in a coordinated fashion and just do better in our work. So in terms of the next steps, and I'll get to the funding in a second, this committee wants to essentially break up the recommendations into categories. Like the clearest example is there's a set of recommendations around data. So why don't we clump those recommendations together, get folks, obviously, folks from 211 as well, together to talk about what data looks like and where we need to go and things to that nature. And then there are recommendations around advocacy and funding. And we would get a group together on that to sort of speak to what does advocacy look like? Who do we ask? What are we looking for? And things to that nature. Ideally, this committee is one that continues with many of the members that are already on it and new members that need to join, but more specifically, continues to be a Orange County-wide committee and not a County of Orange committee. Now, the County of Orange, this commission, the COC are critical partners in this work. And 2 out of the 3 of those groups have access to funding, and I think will play critical roles in the funding piece of that. So I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, thank you. I totally believe in what we need to do in terms of collaborating on this. Yeah, things that we know, from the vouchers to stabilization funds, like the work that we're doing now on youth. We know like it's like $2,800 a youth will help them develop a plan and help them stabilize, right? And you start thinking about all these things that we know. How do we, get more visibility and more resources to them? But totally supportive, and thank you for leading this work.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Bruno Nelson.
At the risk of sounding overly simplistic, because I certainly don't want to, I'm going to get the saying wrong, but the saying, don't let perfection get in the way of good, or whatever that saying is, you get my drift. I love the idea of the data, and I love the idea of potentially for us to even come up with some sort of good definition of what prevention services are, so that we can start measuring our impact as soon as possible. It may not be the perfect definition, but it's a definition, and it may just be particular services. For example, Cal Optima Health provides tenancy services. Those services are specifically for individuals who were at one point homeless and are no longer unhoused, and that we are giving them tenancy services to remain housed. That, to me, is an easy indicator of the number of people that we know we provided preventative services to. I absolutely agree with your board member's definition of prevention being affordable housing. That's why Cal Optima Health invests in affordable housing. How many affordable housing units do we have in this county, and how many folks are living in those units? Those people are preventing homeless. So, I would love for us to see these 10 things equal prevention, and this is the amount of people that we have prevented becoming unhoused. Again, not a perfect definition, but it would be lovely to start someplace where we could all rally around that, so that we could come up with a number. What a lovely, going back to, advertising our success, what a lovely number to be able to give and show on an annual basis of how many people we prevented becoming unhoused because of the services we provide.
I agree with that 100%. Let's share our story. Let's figure out what those measurable outcomes are. Let's share our story of this is what we're doing. We're actually doing good. We're making strides. So do we need to do anything else other than prevention committee? Go for it.
Next item, we'll talk a little bit to that, but yes.
Oh, good. Okay, great. Well, thank you, everyone. So now we will move to the action items. Madam Clerk, will you please read the next item?
Yes, item number 5 is approve revisions to the commission to address homelessness bylaws to establish the commission's authority to create subcommittees to be submitted to the Board of Supervisors for final approval, and we do not have any requests to speak.
Okay, great. So do we need to go over what those changes are? Is it just that?
Yeah, if you don't mind, so obviously the item we just moved off of the prevention report, I mentioned how the committee that helped stand up this report is very much interested in transitioning the work into an implementation phase. They're also interested in ensuring that this is done through a formal committee that focuses not only on tracking and reporting the progress being made, but ensuring that the work is being done in an inclusive manner. In our eyes, the Office of Care Coordination, this interest really aligns with the commission. And we've had a talk with Chair Cunningham and the Prevention Ad Hoc about possibly folding this committee into the commission. But before any formal discussion can happen on that specific action, we realized that our bylaws did not include language around committees. So this recommended action is to revise the bylaws to include language around the committee. You'll see the proposed language in your packet. This revision is specific to committees in general and not specifically a prevention committee. If you all approve this recommendation, we will bring these bylaws to the Board of Supervisors for final approval. And in our October meeting, most likely our office would agendize the possibility of a prevention committee being formed. So I just make that distinction that all we're doing is adding a committee into the framework. And then there's another step to talk about what committee there is. And then the last thing I'll mention, which is very obvious, just because you add a committee onto the bylaws doesn't mean you're required to have one. It just provides you with that flexibility. And then I guess the final thing is the clerk, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but from my understanding, the difference between the ad hocs, obviously, is that an ad hoc is a time-sensitive or a time-limited group. Not that we see this, a committee being running forever, but it provides it more time to live and breathe. The committee obviously is required to report up to the commission, and then the committee allows for non-commission members to participate. Ad hocs are strictly commissioners, and I think the last one is that it does committees are fit under the Brown Act requirement as well, or at least they are with our COC. So all, bureaucratic details that are important to share with you all. So.
Great. Thank you, Doug. I think it's important that this will allow others, other than commissioners, to be able to sit on these committees, because there's a ton of other thought leaders in this community that have a lot to share. Is there a way that you could point to us on here in our packet of where the change was made? Because this will be something that we want to discuss and then take action on. Julie.
Yeah, I'll let Julie.
It's on page 7 out of 10 in the red line version under agenda item number 5.
Thank you, Julie. I should keep turning and then I would see the red lines. I can tell you that I fully support this. Obviously, adding committees and having it as part of our bylaws to be able to bring recommendation up to the commission and then ultimately to the Board of Supervisors, if we agree, I think is critical to the work that we're doing here in this room. So I'd love to open it up for discussion. Commissioner Rios-Faust.
Agree with the addition. I just have a quick question, because I'm not sure if it's a typo, but on page 7 of 10, number 3, ad hoc committees may be established to serve as a resource to assist in the functions of the COC board. Is that intentional, or should that say commission?
That was existing already.
Yeah, but I'm wondering if it's actually, if we missed it when we did it the first time, or if it should stay like that. Because the functions of the COC, normally the COC board does their ad hocs. So that's why I'm asking, was it like did we have it in here before as a mistake, and is this the right time to correct it? Is basically what I'm asking.
Yeah, we could, that's clearly just a thing we didn't catch. So I think we're able to make can we add that red line to, yes, okay, and put the Commission to Address Homelessness in replacement for the COC board. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you for noticing that.
That was impressive. So can I make a motion to approve?
You can, as long as there isn't any other discussion.
Don't you do this?
Yes, please.
I'll make a motion to approve the amended version.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Action passes. As amended. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Madam Clerk, will you read the next action item?
Item number 6 is approve Orange County Continuum of Care Board and the Commission to Address Homelessness minutes from the July 21st, 2026 joint special meeting, and we do not have any requests to speak.
Wonderful. Is there any discussion amongst the commissioners? Motion to approve? Thank you. Second? Thank you, Vice Chair. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Action passes. And last one, Madam Clerk, will you please read the next item?
Item number 7 is approve Commission to Address Homelessness minutes from the June 17th, 2026 regular meeting, and we do not have any requests to speak.
Wonderful. Any discussion? Do I have a motion? Commissioner Parks, a second. Commissioner Faust-Rios, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, action passes. Look, and we're early. Oh, I'm sure I have to say something. That concludes this meeting of the Commission to Address Homelessness. We are now adjourned, and our next regularly scheduled meeting will be held Wednesday, October 21st, 2026, at 1 p.m. Thank you, and don't miss that exciting meeting in October.
And please go tour or read through the display if at all possible. Thank you.
This would be so much more fun.